Welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
We are excited to have you on. Bonnie, I ended up meeting you because you have, outside of the Texas International Wine Competition, you have a company where you have CYA'd 100% for me. She totally did during my remodel / disaster insurance crap that I went through. And Bonnie really came through with all of her vendors.
So not only are you a wine aficionado, but you handle flooring.
She does, and she got to experience a little bit of Michelle's anal retentive psychosis and colors. Psychosis, a little bit of psychosis. So thank you for answering my phone call to come on the podcast.
So Bonnie, how did you end up in the Central Texas area?
Well, when I moved back from Spain in 2011.
Okay.
And my son had gone to Texas State here. So I came to see him first thing. And the sun was setting, and it was about, I don't know what time it was, but it was the most beautiful sunset I ever saw in my life.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with Texas and the people, the kindness. If you had your blinker on, they would just like slow down so you could get in on the expressway and things like that.
That's true. It's still a little like that.
You came from Florida, right?
I came from Spain.
From Spain. So you originated in Florida.
Correct.
And then
I moved to Spain in 2001. And then I moved here in 2011.
So you came from Spain to Texas.
Correct.
So were you in Zaragoza the whole time?
I was in Huesca, which is Aragon, in the province of Aragon.
Okay. I've been to it. That's very close to Zaragoza, right?
Oh, yes. That's where I went to school.
Okay, in Zaragoza.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Zaragoza many times, actually. When I was a kid, my dad was stationed in Rota, Spain, which is way down south by Cadiz. And we used to ride a bus for 16 hours up to Zaragoza to go to track meets and things like that. But how did you like living in Spain?
I loved it. The people are great. The culture is great. The wine is awesome. It was nice.
Yeah.
It's a very different lifestyle than we have here.
In
Really?
what way?
How
Yeah.
so?
Well, they're not workaholics. It's mostly, back then it was mostly people for family and good times and, spending time on the weekends with your family at the little villages and the villages where they usually were born.
Do they still, well, it's of course been a long time since you've been there, but when I was there, which was a long time ago, they did siesta where like all the shops would close down like at 1 o'clock and didn't open. Yeah,
1:30 to 3:30.
Yeah, they just closed. Like
I'm gonna enact Spanish Day here in the podcast.
Well, it's pretty cool though. They'd go home and have lunch with their family and maybe take a little nap, and then they'd come back to work.
What were like? I've never been to Spain, but what necessarily were the living conditions in Spain? Was it big buildings and condos and suburban areas?
So Huesca, where I was, is the Pyrenees. So it's about.
Oh, that's a dog.
No.
They're beautiful too.
Yeah.
Just like the Pyrenees Mountains.
Yeah.
But it was only about 40,000 people in the valley. So
very village-esque type.
Right. It was. They called it a city with 40,000 people, but then you would go out in 5 minutes, you would be way up in the mountains.
Oh yeah. The
border with France.
Yeah, the Pyrenees is the tour of Spain. They go through the Pyrenees, and there's some brutal climbs, really steep roads up there.
The Tour of France, 7%.
Yeah,
they used to. There's some that are like 7%, and they used to
or more.
They used to go past our flat.
Oh, did they really? You'd see them
on the Coso.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's cool.
So, is that where you got into wine?
Yes.
Okay, and then did you go to school in Spain for that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, tell us about that. Tell us about your education there in wine.
Well, my first part of the education was back in the late 80s.
Oh.
And so it goes way back to where I started learning about the culture and the love that they have for their food and their wine and their families and everything. And so after it was I guess about 11 or 12 years after that when I moved there permanently that I went to Zaragoza, Spain.
Okay.
Zaragoza, Spain, and got a formal degree to go into the business. But for all those years, I would travel 2 or 3 times a year and meet people, and we did a lot of genealogy research and wine research and stuff.
Is it a lot of family wineries there in Spain? Just like generational passed down.
There are some that are left, and that's one of the reasons why I feel that the Spain wines are a lot less expensive than some of the newer wines where people have acquired the property later on, where if it's a third or fourth generation winery, they don't amortize the land into the bottle of wine.
Oh.
Whereas if someone goes out and buys 100 hectares today, at today's price, their wine's going to be
has to be
double.
more expensive.
Right.
Oh, I
Well,
never thought of that.
my first introduction to wine was the great late Boone's Farm, and
Which was 99 cents
it
at
was
7-Eleven.
Hey, it was better than the Mad Dog 2020 you were probably buying.
Actually, that is true. I've had my episodes with that. Maybe that's why I'm not a big wine aficionado.
Maybe that's probably why you're not supposed to drink the whole thing. But so I kind of want to know, like Steve and I are the same thing. We're not really big wine aficionados. We're not really big wine people as much. But I'm fascinated behind the fascination with wine and
Fanatics
and
almost.
absolutely.
People really get into it.
And I was telling Steve that, back in the early days, Jesus days, that, water wasn't really safe to drink. And so people were drinking wine. Babies were drinking wine.
Yeah. Is that one of the reasons that wine started to become a thing, was because it would be fermented water, I guess?
I guess.
Because it's healthier, Bonnie?
I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that when we would be in the villages, they would give for dessert, the little children would have a piece of pan de pueblo, which is, country bread, and they would pour wine on it and then sugar on top of that. And they would, kind of like we do peanut butter, I guess jelly.
Oh, peanut butter and jelly, yeah.
But they didn't do the peanut butter, just the wine.
Yeah.
That's why they all had siestas, because
Probably true. Do you know, Bonnie, are there health benefits to wine? Have you done any research on that? Because I know nothing about wine, so tell us all about that.
Well, yeah, I believe there are many health benefits as long as it's done in moderation.
Okay.
For example, in Spain, there's like 6 meals a day. Some of them are little snacks early in the morning, and breakfast, and then lunch, and then your big meal, and then a little snack at night, and then your cena.
Your what? What is it called?
Cena. It's like their evening meal around 9:30 at night.
Oh, it's dinner.
Well, yeah, but because they have a siesta, they stay up a lot later too. You go to dinner at like 9 o'clock, right? Which is my bedtime.
That's what we call in the States here your bowl of cereal at 9 o'clock at night. That's what it is.
That's right.
For sure.
But wine is included in all of those meals.
Oh.
Except for breakfast during the work week. But if you're in the village and with family and celebrating on the weekend, they have wine with breakfast as well.
Okay.
But not much, you see. Here, we fill the glass completely.
Oh.
There, they put 2 ounces, 2 ounces maybe, a little bit more. And so it's very small amounts of wine that they drink with each one of these meals. They might have 2 ounces, but it's not like they fill a glass up or drink a 6-ounce glass or 8-ounce glass of wine.
Is that just because they want the taste of it? It's sort of like having a chocolate after dinner kind of thing?
I think it's with dinner. I think that it's just tradition.
Huh. Interesting.
Because you don't see many intoxicated people in Spain. At least you didn't used to.
Or maybe that's just their personality now.
Well, or they have a high tolerance for it.
Okay, so in order to get a degree, and I'm going to butcher this, okay, Steve wanted me to say this, a viticulture? Okay, viticulture. Oh, look at that. Enology? Enology, okay, and marketing.
Knock that one out of the
that
park.
one for sure. So, what is the process of that? How many years did you go? Months did you go? And are you just like fully immersed into that kind of from the start to finish?
Yeah.
Are you learning how to grow them, and you're learning how to show them? What does that look like?
So it was a agricultural university, Monasterio Colgallada, in Zaragoza, Spain. And we were I actually got subsidized by
It's okay.
United Nations.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the United Nations subsidized the education. It was a one year course, and it was 2 days a week, every other week. So it was 12 hours every 2 weeks for a year.
Okay.
And it was very interesting. We traveled to vineyards. So the viticulture, great wines have to come from great grapevines, okay? The
Okay.
grapevines have to be cared for and loved for all year long. It's not just plant them and let them go. So it's a baby, and they take care of it all year long. And so we learned all about viticulture locally within Spain, but then we also traveled to Bordeaux, France for a week, and we traveled to Piedmont, Italy for a week.
Oh.
To see the differences there. So is that, it's sort of like two different industries. There's the industry of growing the grapes, and then there's the industry of making the wines. And then you studied both.
Correct, and the marketing. So some people buy their grapes from grape growers,
Okay.
viticulturists. Some people, whenever it says estate grown and bottled, it means that winemaker is also the viticulturist, and he takes care of his babies throughout the whole year, and then also makes the wine.
Oh,
Right there,
interesting.
usually at the winery or at the where the vineyards are. That's
And
cool.
a blend is something that they've taken from all different types of grapes, right? It's the blend. That's
Correct.
quite necessary.
So what makes a great wine? Why I hear this all the time. There's some really great wines, and then there's some kind of wines. What's the difference?
Yeah, like the oaky flavors or something like that.
What
yeah.
is the difference?
There is so much about wine. Like, people will sometimes say, oh, he's an expert or she's an expert. Impossible. It's an agricultural product. It is different every single year. Viticulturists are farmers. And so sometimes you have great crops and great years, and other times you don't. And it just depends on what the climate brings.
Okay.
So in Rioja, for example, which is where my wine brand that I co-founded was from, in Rioja, each year the denomination of origin, which is the regulatory council, will rate the harvest. So
Okay.
it's either a good harvest, a very good harvest, or an excellent harvest. When they have an excellent harvest, those grapes, since everything came out exactly how it should, they will take those wines and they will put them in barrels, and they will spend the money to age them in barrels for years. Sometimes it's could be 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. But those are the wines that you can cellar and lay down.
Oh, okay.
Most people think you can save young wine, but young wine really, after its release date, should be drank within 3 years. Otherwise, the liveliness of it starts to go downhill.
Okay.
The liveliness meaning what? What is that?
So wine is a live product.
okay.
And if you heat wine, once wine starts to get to 75 degrees, it starts to what I call cooked. It starts to go flat. So if you can imagine a flat Coca-Cola, if you leave wine in a car or a vehicle and it's 70 degrees outside, within 1 hour it's 100 and something degrees inside that car. Texas has these things posted in the stops, the rest stops
Yeah,
and things.
sure.
And so once it gets to that point, sometimes the corks will even pop out of the bottle. I had a whole truck of wine with the corks pop out of the bottles. So that's cooked wine. And then the other thing is, if you ship wine without having it temperature controlled, when it arrives to its destination, it can be cooked, which is, again, flat Coca-Cola. And so people who don't handle the wine with special care, as if it's a baby, as if it's a live product, which it is, it can get destroyed.
So do you think, like, when you're going to a grocery store and you're going to the wine section, if the grocery store isn't cooled enough, or you're seeing it all stacked in the back, that where would you necessarily...
Yeah, how would you know?
How do you know? Like, if you're just going to the grocery store and you're wanting to pick up a bottle of wine, you're probably not recommending going to the grocery store, going right to... Okay, yeah.
So, there's different places you can go, and a lot of times they'll have wine on pallets where you can see them, or even if they're just on the shelves. The bottle has a capsule on top, and you can see a little indentation on the top. If that bottle looks like this,
If it's got a little bit
if the cork is
a
starting,
bubble sticking up,
if the cork is if it's crowning the cork, then
It's been cooked.
it has been compromised. To what degree, you don't know until you open that bottle and taste it.
Interesting.
there's a nugget right there. I never knew that.
So I have a question. I know that there's this newer question about corking versus the screw top. And I know some of the higher end wineries are going to the screw top because they feel like they can keep the integrity of the wine. Do you have an opinion on that?
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with the screw tops. Screw tops are perfect for young wine, like I was saying. If you're drinking a young wine that has no barrel aging, it should be drank within in my opinion, 3 to 5 years maximum from the release date. And so the screw tops cannot hurt anything. Approximately, I think it was 2 to 3% or 3 to 4% of all wines that have corks, they do occasionally have what's called corked wine.
I've heard of that.
And so it's a natural tree. So when they make the cork, there could be a little tiny pinhole. And when it gets in there, if you ever purchase a wine at a restaurant or something, it has a little bit of a musty smell, it's corked. And it's not a good idea to drink.
Oh, really? Will it make you sick, or is it just gross?
It's just gross.
Okay.
I don't know if it would make you sick. It makes me sick.
Huh.
Well, okay, so for Steve, somebody that doesn't drink wine at all, you're
Know
not
nothing
really
about wine.
But the history and the process of wine is really kind of fascinating, right? So if you were suggest a glass of wine to Steve for somebody who said I don't like wine, it's because he had Mad Dog 2020. What would you suggest? I mean, are you steering somebody who says, "Oh, I don't really drink wine"? Are you steering them towards more of
That's a good question,
of a red,
yeah.
a white, or a sparkling?
Where do you start?
Absolutely. So the wine brand that I had three types: Young, Crianza, and Reserva. The Young had no barrel aging. Crianza 12 months, and Reserva 24 months in the barrel.
Okay.
So those three had totally different tastes. When we were introducing the wine to all the villages in the province, we would go and we would do blind tastings for people and let them try the young wine with no barrel aging and no complexity from the barrel. And all of the women loved it. Most of them would say, I don't drink red wine. And then I would do, okay, let's do a test. Let's just see what you like here. And 9 times out of 10, they would say, oh my gosh, that's so good. So you have to find what you like. Each individual has what they like. But for someone who isn't really into wine and hasn't learned the complexities of it, I would say a young wine with no barrel aging is what I did, and it worked very well.
A young wine, Steve. A young wine.
Okay,
with no
yes.
barrel.
Well,
There you go.
I get it, but I want to know, when you say complexities, what are complexities of wine?
So when the excellent years or the very good years are put in barrels, they refine in the barrel. And they have to always they have to top off the barrels because of the angels share. So the wines
That's
evaporate a little.
Okay.
And so the wineries have to constantly top them off because oxidation is not good for wine.
Okay.
You need to keep the air out of it if you
Okay.
if you have a half a bottle left or something.
Okay. So as those age, it adds complexity. Is that
Correct.
Is that right? And so how does that manifest itself in the taste? What are you noticing when you drink a really good bottle of wine as far as the complexities? What do you notice?
Because one of the things, like when they're judging or they're tasting, don't you see like people, they take their wine glass and this has good legs. I mean, have you ever heard?
I have seen that. And I think that it looks to me
there's
like
the layers of the wine. Like, it's kind of like an everlasting gum stopper. Here comes the macaroni and cheese.
Okay, all right. Bonnie and I are looking at you like you're nuts.
She knows what I'm talking about, right? It's like the different layers, okay.
Okay, let me just say a little something on that. Okay, so people talk about legs and all this and lots of things. All of our judges, none of our judges are snooty. We don't have any snooty judges. We have down-to-earth judges from all over the world, great people that come and judge wines. The reason that people do the swirling, though, is not, I was talking to you before the show about 2 ounces.
Uh-huh.
Okay, only 2 ounces is what, they serve, or 3. And if you pour your glass up with more than 2 ounces, you cannot possibly swirl it and smell it because you'll spill the wine everywhere.
Okay.
Okay, so you really want to swirl and sniff because the complexities come in whether the wine was, let's say, 12 months or 24 months.
Does the swirl help
It helps the
smelling?
fragrance come out?
You get all the volatile attributes to the wine when you sniff it. So I should have brought wine, guys.
I know. What
We
the
thought
heck?
you were, Bonnie.
I know. What the heck? It's in her car. It's all popped right
We
now.
could have gone to Pigpen after this, half in the bag.
I could swirl my Dr. Pepper for you.
Yeah. So the tasting of wine starts with the how it looks when it comes out of the bottle, and the smell, and then finally the taste.
Correct. Exactly.
Look at that! I learned something.
Okay,
new.
so here's another pop quiz for you. I have every time I've drank red wine, I get little hives on my chest. And so is it the sulfates? Is it the histamines? Is it the tannins? What is it? Because then when I go to somebody snooty who drinks good red wine and they're like, oh, this one won't cause that because you're probably drinking crappy wine. I'm like,
yeah.
So
are there things put in wine to preserve them that cause those kind of things?
There are legal limits to sulfites. How many sulfites you can put into the wine? So many grams per liter, or however they calculate that. But most of the times, if you're drinking wines and you're having reactions, some people always say all different stories, like it's the sulfites
or the histamines.
The histamines, yeah. Right. I disagree with that. I think it's the added sugar when people chaptalize the wine. So
chaptalize?
Chaptalize. When they add sugar after they've made the wine.
To sweeten it up to
interesting.
If it was picked a little green, let's say, they didn't wait till the pH was at the perfect level, because that plot over by Michelle could be ready today, and that plot over by you may not be ready for a week. And if you have all the workers there and you want to pick all the grapes at one time, then sometimes you get things in wine that...
Do they have to disclose that they've added sugar?
They do not. They do not. It is against the law in Spain and Italy. I know that it's also against the law in Mendoza, Argentina. But
I think we allow a lot of stuff in the States that's not allowed in other places.
Do you know that you can get vegan wine? Did you know that?
Isn't all wine vegan?
Right. Look for vegan or unrefined. What to do if you react to wine? Look for vegan or unrefined
That's all
wine.
vegan.
Right. If you're sensitive to eggs, dairy, and fish proteins. But the reason why is because sometimes the soils, depending on how they are fertilizing.
She's got something to say about that. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Is that true? Fertilizing the soils? That they're going to have eggs and dairy and, I don't know, fish proteins?
Well, threw a curveball.
Yeah, no, there's many different reasons. But basically, if people are making wine without manipulating it, if they're making wine the way it comes with the correct pH, when they pick the grapes, and there are several people here in Texas doing that, let me tell you.
Really?
You are safe, that you will not get sick. Okay? I challenge anyone to drink a bottle that is not manipulated and tell me that they got sick.
They got sick. Huh?
I just don't. I mean, not the whole bottle, of course, but it depends on how, everything is.
Steve's like, I actually do like this wine stuff.
Yeah.
What's the oldest bottle of wine that you've had? Probably not as old as Steve, right?
Probably not.
Well, I had a Vega Cecilia 1981 a few years ago.
So that's, 45 years old. Wow.
But I've had some that were probably 40s, 50s, 60s while in school and while traveling throughout Spain before I started the education.
So what makes a 40-year-old wine better than something that's 3 years old?
That's a good question. Yeah.
That is a good question. So 3 years old would be a young wine, of course. Right. But a 45-year-old, the amazing fact that it could still be alive, that the product is still alive after so many years refining in the bottle, providing it's kept temperature controlled. There are amazing things. That's why people do valuations of wine cellars and stuff, because depending on how the bottle was kept, if you let it get heated up for 1 hour, that's
it. It's done. So in the course of 50 years, there's so many opportunities for that bottle to get turned. Turned bad, literally, yeah.
If people move houses and they put wine into boxes in the moving truck.
We were talking about that right before we started recording, that we had somebody, we sold their house and they had this beautiful wine cellar, and they were like, well, we got to do the wine. And we're like, just throw it in boxes and put it in the back of the truck. We didn't realize that this was a thing.
We're idiots. We don't know anything
we are,
about it.
That's not true. You could never, don't say that, because you could never know. When it comes to wine, you could never know everything.
I've it has to be taken care of. You can't just put it in a bottle and throw it on a shelf and just figure it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. What about your journey of establishing the Texas International Wine Competition? And like, why did you start this? Was this something that was not even going on here in Texas? And
Well, Texas had several, or still does have several wine competitions. The Houston Rodeo and different San Antonio Rodeo and other ones. But
the rodeo, interesting, huh? You're going to have a rodeo wine competition.
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, I decided to start it because I fell in love with the wine competition in New York. It was the only wine competition that was for charity. 15 years, we sent about 5,500 kids with cancer to camp for free.
Oh, wow.
And the year I decided to start the Texas International Wine Competition, we had 3,824 entries from 26 countries in all states in the USA. And
Wow.
so when Texas won Best of Class Cabernet Sauvignon, I almost died. And I said, that's it. I'm doing this. So imagine, every country produces Cabernet Sauvignon. And we had 26 countries. And we had all the states in this United States. And there Texas won Best of Class 2015
Wow.
Los Pinos Ranch Vineyards.
Huh. So why is Texas wine? Because it seems like Texas wine has just kind of taken off in the last 10 years. Why is that?
Well, I've been very deep into it for the past 14 years now.
Okay.
And I would say it's that people are getting educated. When you start a wine business, there's actually no wine books that I'm aware of. At least when I went into started the business, there was no wine books that you could go and learn about the wine,
Okay.
or how to treat it, or any of this. And I think once people realize that wine is like a baby and they should treat it as such, they win more awards. They sell more wine. They get better. People should never ship wine in the summer months, or even starting now. March is too hot.
Really? So is it also
Unless it's temperature controlled.
unless it's
Yeah.
temperature controlled? Now the climate here in the Texas Hill Country, it's very conducive to really good wine. And I was talking to Steve earlier, I think it was in our monologue, we were talking about stressed wine is good wine, and why Napa and the climate from Napa, California here to Dripping Springs in the Texas Hill Country is very similar. The soil is very similar. So what exactly does that mean? Like stressed wine, the more stressed the wine, the more stressed the grape,
The vine.
the better.
Does that produce a better wine?
The older the vine, the better the wine.
Okay.
So as the vines age, the grapes become smaller and smaller. They produce less and less. So I was very fortunate to have gone to a vineyard that in Spain that was about 125 years old, and they were producing amazing.
And they're also
wine.
planting
Yeah.
things next to the vineyards or next to the wine, right, or to the grapes, so that it'll pick up. Sometimes it'll pick up those particular flavors, right?
I'm not sure about that answer.
Okay.
I don't believe that's the case. I think, people say all kinds of things, but from what I understand, when they plant like the rose bushes and things,
Yes,
they will see if there's any. The rose is a more delicate agricultural product and will show faster of a potential danger coming to the crops.
Oh, okay. Kind of like a canary in a coal mine. It's like if your roses start to die, maybe you got to watch out for your vines.
Oh, that's interesting.
So you were talking about the age of vines. In Texas, we can't have any. Do we have any 100-year-old vines? They've all got to be fairly new, right? Because Texas wine is a fairly new thing.
Yes.
So, but if the older vines create a better wine, why are we in Texas making good wine if all the vines are fairly young?
Because some of the greatest winemakers and some of the greatest grape growers here in Texas, which, I can name a few. There's Dr. V.J. Reddy, Newsom Vineyards,
Okay.
Dan Gatlin. That's the one I fell in love with when I first came here. Was someone gifted me a bottle of Dan Gatlin's wine, and then first time we met, we just understood that you can make great wine anywhere.
Yeah.
So he was making wines and comparing them to Vega Sicilia, which is a very well-known brand. Another one, a Chablis from France. And he would do his tasting, and 8 times out of 10, people would probably pick the Texas ones. That's how good they were.
Huh.
And it was a tasting of about $1,200 worth of wine. So these tastings, to do a complete tasting was just amazing.
You, the marketing. You got it. You studied the marketing of wines too. How important is it to have a good label on the bottle of wine?
That's a good question. Yeah.
I think a label. There's a huge percentage of people that buy wine for the labels.
Yeah.
So I
That's
think
the way I would buy it.
Yeah. This one's pretty.
Yeah.
I think the labels and also the bottles. If you pay an extra 50 cents or 50 centimils for a bottle, you use a nicer label. If you use a cheap paper label, it will look dirty and just not nice. So I do think that good labels are important, as well as good bottles.
Do the bottle colors matter on the type of wine?
Yes, whenever you find a white wine that's in a dark bottle, they really care about that wine. So for marketing purposes, they started using clear bottles so people could see that it had been the wine had been filtered a lot, and they could see the color. So they used, for marketing purposes, clear bottles. But the truth of the matter is, you would like to keep your young wines and white wines and rosés and everything in darker bottles to keep the sunlight out.
Okay, because that breaks down the wine too. The sunlight. It's so crazy to me how, like, you think. I've always just thought of wine like just like almost like beer. You just put it on the shelf and then you drink it. But now I've got you. Not only do you have to enjoy it, but do you get to enjoy it, but you got to take care of it.
Yeah. Have
that's
you ever
crazy.
had this is like a wild card question though. Have you ever had a good glass of wine and you didn't know that it came from a box?
Absolutely.
Really? So there
Absolutely.
is some good boxed wine out there.
So in Spain, we would box the wines in 15 liters. So here the law was only 3 liters that you can have boxed wine. So if you're drinking young wine, there's no reason why it should not have a screw top or be bagged in a box.
Interesting.
How do you know it's young wine?
Because
there-
it has
is there-
no barrel aging.
Okay.
It'll have the
Does
date
it
on
say
it.
that on the label? So, because I'm going into the store, where would you recommend I go? A liquor store, like Specs or something? For
Yes.
okay.
And then what region? Which region should
even
he go
simpler
to?
than that. So I'm looking for a young wine. I don't want anything too complex because I don't know what I'm doing yet. What am I looking for on the label? Does it have a date or something that I look for? What do I do?
There should be dates. Yes, there should be dates on wine on the bottles.
Okay.
And if it's a white wine or a red wine or a rosé wine that doesn't have any barrel aging, like I said, it should be 3 to 5 years after the harvest.
Okay.
Maximum, because it's about 6 months after the harvest that the young wines are released. So the harvest is in October of 2000, and 2001 March it gets released.
How does it say that on the label? Do I know that?
It will tell you it should. Well, I know in Spain it does. It
Okay.
has the harvest date. It has
Okay.
the date of
Does it
harvest.
have the harvest date and the bottling date on a good bottle of wine?
The bottling's not important because
Okay.
everybody kind of knows when it is, but
Okay.
it's the vintage, the year that the grapes were picked.
Okay. Wow, this is so crazy. I never knew this. That all this stuff was.
I didn't either. I didn't. So when you're judging a wine, walk us through that. So you have however many glasses of wine, and you're sampling, I guess, red, right? And so there's different criteria or benchmarks that you have to hit.
Yeah. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. So when we do a flight of, let's say, Cabernet Sauvignon, it's very important to have certain details about the wine. And the most important is the residual sugar. How many grams of sugar per liter are in it? If it's less than 2 grams, then it has not been manipulated. If it's more than 2 grams, then it has been manipulated. And if you take a wine, and also the barrel aging is a very important factor.
So you know all of this. This is not just blind tasting.
You know this
blind
while you're
judging.
doing the judging?
This is what we as the competition have to do. And
Okay.
Before
thank-
you're presenting. Oh, okay.
Thank God the founder from New York and my son, they are the ones that do all of that.
Okay.
My son does it it now after so many years. But it's very important because let's say you take a Cabernet Sauvignon, we get 6 to 8 glasses in front of a judge, and you taste from the left to the right, and they have to go from the 0 residual sugar and then go into the sugars, because if you taste a wine and it has 4.8 grams of sugar, Cabernet, from somewhere, and then you go to a 0, you've already saturated your palate.
You won't taste it.
Even though we drink a lot of water and we have palate cleansers, it will mess up the judging of your wine.
Is the one that's 4 point whatever and the one that's 0, is one better than the other, or they just have a different taste?
One has more sugar than the other.
I know,
Yeah,
but
but
is
like
it?
as
But
far
is
as
like
taste,
is the
flavor.
one that has less sugar a better wine than the one that has more sugar, or is it just?
For people who are sugar intolerant, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
If I drink a sip of wine that has 5 grams of sugar, it goes immediately to my head and I get ill.
Steve would start from the right and then work his
Give me the
way
high
to
sugar
left.
one. Yeah.
For sure. Why do they say that dark chocolate is always like it's one of those things that it just tastes better with wine? Do you know that? Like when they're serving like wine, it's like the dark chocolates and the hard cheeses and things.
Absolutely. There's dark chocolate and wine is definitely a thing, and it pairs very well. And of course the cheeses too. And you compare the cheeses. So after I finished the wine school, I did take a 3-month agricultural course on cheese. So that was very interesting. And the cheeses, like the Manchego cheese, is the same, where you have very little aging, and then you have 12 months and 24 months aging. And so when I would do tastings, I would put the young cheese with a young wine, the medium aged with a medium, and the super complex with a super complex. And then you get those flavors working, and it's some very interesting stuff.
It's a whole new world to me.
The palate is an amazing tool, right? I'm a big foodie. You're not as much of a foodie because what are you having for lunch today? 2 chicken fajita tacos.
Chicken fajita
from
tacos.
Pigpen.
I'm at the point in my life where I think of food as just nutrition for my body. I don't really put much weight in how things taste.
I like food. Food
Yeah,
is
you do.
delicious.
Bonnie, on your bio, you mentioned that you don't do much social media. Do you do any social media?
I found an
Not
old
too
Instagram
much.
account of hers. It was
Oh,
just
yeah?
one picture of Bunny. That was it.
Has that been a hindrance to you? Do you feel like you miss out on anything? You could say it.
No, I don't. And I know that social media has its place, and it's really good for some people, and that's awesome. But I learned that it wasn't a smart tool to use in 2011 when I first moved back. Not many people were walking around with 150 apps and iPhones in their hands in 2011 in
Yeah.
Spain.
Yeah, okay.
So it was we were still on Windows 2007, I think.
Okay.
Just to give you an idea.
Yeah.
I came back as a dinosaur.
Oh, yeah. Well, social media, it has its ups and downs. There are some days I wish it never existed, but then there are some days it's actually real beneficial
Well,
to
it's
us.
the digital yellow pages now. Basically, is what
Yeah,
it is.
isn't that the
You know?
truth? Yeah. So when is the Texas International Wine Competition? When is the next one? When are you having the next one?
This month.
This
Oh,
month.
okay.
So the 21st and 22nd, well, we start the 20th. We have the judges' welcome reception on Thursday night, and then we have the judging is Friday and Saturday. And then on Sunday, we have the judges' wine tour where we get a big bus and we take them to some of the best wineries in the Hill Country. And
Where's the competition held?
it's being held at the Buda Welcome Center,
Oh, okay.
downtown Buda.
Now, can the public attend this if they wanted to?
It's not open to the public.
Okay.
The judging is a very serious thing, and but volunteers, people can sign up and volunteer, and they can certainly come there. And we also have guest judges. So we invite guest judges to come and sit with the judges and see what it's all about.
I think you should have a wild card. I think you should have Steve or myself who know nothing
No,
about
you
wine.
definitely don't want me.
Just
Maybe
in there
you.
as a wild card.
I'll just videotape you tasting all the wine and
It'll be
Getting
the
tipsy.
social media hit. Well, you know what? we'll just give you some dark chocolate.
yeah, that's
all
right. That'll
that-
be fun.
That's all you.
How many wines are you going to judge at this next one?
We have 754 entries from
Dang.
11 countries And I'm not sure how many states, but last year it was 29 states.
Wow. And it's a blind competition. Nobody knows. They're just doing it on the quality that they see in the wine, and that's it.
Exactly. And each wine is judged on its own merit. So in other words, if a judge has six or eight glasses in front of them, they are not comparing one to the other. Each wine is individually judged on its own merit. And that's why they have to be, the flights have to be with the residual sugars. So you can evaluate this without having an issue, the first one or the last one.
Okay. So you got 700 plus wines. How do you pare it down to a certain number and then everybody tastes those again?
The panels are 4 judges.
Okay.
Per panel. And it's very diverse. We will have a winemaker, perhaps a marketing person, winery owner,
podcast host,
education, people who are in the wine education. A lot of those people are also judges. But what we do is Nancy Stabens, the lady who runs the judge room, and myself, we get together and we decide what judges we put together to make sure that it's very diverse. And if someone doesn't have the answer, the other person might.
Okay.
So if there's a question about a variety that they're not familiar with or something.
I'm reading your judging process here, and wow, the judges are encouraged to discuss each wine, but the panel does not have to come to consensus on what medal, if any, to award a wine. And the judges are given a category name, varietal, composition, vintage, and residual sugar in order to accurate. It's just like a whole
stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and how many judges did you say you had?
I believe we have 24.
24 judges. Wow.
How can people find out? So you said you need volunteers, and how can people find out more about the wine competition?
Well, if they just they can go to the website, txiwc.com, for Texas International Wine Competition. And there's a volunteer tab at the top of the page. You can click on volunteer and just sign up.
They're looking for packing wine, pouring wine. I could do that. Assisting judges. What I wanted to touch on before we close up was you started this because you talked about the giving back aspect of it. And tell me where you guys focus your attention on giving back after. So everybody that is submitting wine, they're paying an entry fee, right? And then obviously you have operating costs and, all the other logistic stuff. But then once you have the money that you're donating, where is it going to right now here in Central Texas?
Various charities. But it's the wine that we donate. So because the competition, it really doesn't make a lot of money.
Yes, you and I had talked about that. Yeah,
right. It's a lot of work, and
so
there's a lot of expenses.
So you're donating the wine so that they can have like their competition or their
fundraisers, galas,
and stuff like that.
If it's a nonprofit, we donate to it. There's a lot of things that are not on the website. A lot of charities in Austin that this website needs to be.
So are you always looking for charities that are looking for? Because you have a lot. I mean, if you had that 800 bottles of wine, you need to.
We are definitely looking.
Looking for
to partner with good charities.
So you give them a case of wine, they auction it off, and those funds go to their cause. That's really great.
That is great. Well, how are they going to get in touch with you if they want to be a part of this? Again, they go to the website, and then there's volunteer information.
txiwc.com.
But if you're a nonprofit and you're looking for maybe a donation of wine, same process.
My email is Bonnie, BONNIE, at txiwc.com.
I think that's great. I think that's wonderful that you do that.
Bonnie, you taught me a lot about wine. Michelle's making fun of me about the Mad Dog 2020, but that's my experience with wine. So you've taught me a lot, and I appreciate you coming in today and spending this time with us.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. And again, I have to tell you, I'm going to give a plug for her for her other business that she has that actually probably pays her bills too. Four floors. Four floors design. She got her interior design degree in Miami back in the day, and she's a wealth of information. I've sent her to some of our clients most recently. So
Bonnie, you have to be a saint if you've put up with Michelle.
Yes,
so.
you do. Yeah, very patient.
Yeah,
very patient.
Well, Bonnie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Okay, and Michelle is a great client. She knows what she wants, and there's nothing wrong with that.
That's great. So, all right, thanks for coming on, Bonnie.
You're welcome. Have a great day, guys.
All right, we're out. Good job, Bonnie.